My name is Margaret, and for the past 6 months my entire world had revolved around one single magical event that was supposed to represent the culmination of everything I had worked toward as a mother, my daughter Emma's wedding to her, James, scheduled to take place in the most romantic city in the world, Paris, France. There comes a moment in every parent's life when you realize that the child you raised, nurtured, and sacrificed everything for has grown into someone you barely recognize. And this is the story of how my own daughter's cruelty taught me the most valuable lesson about self-respect and the power of consequences. For 28 years, I believed that unconditional love meant accepting any treatment, no matter how hurtful, simply because it came from family. But sometimes, the people we love most need to learn that actions have repercussions, and parents deserve the same respect they've always shown their children. Emma had always been my pride and joy, my only child after years of fertility struggles, and from the moment she announced her engagement, I threw myself into helping her plan what she called her fairy tale wedding, with the kind of enthusiasm that only a mother who had dreamed of this day for decades could muster. We spent countless hours together browsing through wedding dress catalogs, sampling flowers from 3 different florists, tasting cakes, until we were both sick of buttercream, and most importantly, discussing every single detail of what would happen during those precious few days in Paris, when our small family would expand to include James and his wonderful parents who had welcomed me with open arms from the very beginning. The wedding was scheduled for early spring, when the cherry blossoms would be in full bloom along the Seine, and Emma had specifically chosen the date because she remembered how I had always told her stories about my own honeymoon in Paris 30 years ago, back when her father was still alive and we were young and foolish, and believed that love could conquer anything life threw at us. In those months leading up to the wedding, I felt closer to Emma than I had since she was a little girl, and I genuinely believed that planning this wedding together was healing some of the distance that had grown between us over the years, especially since she had moved across the country for her career, and our phone calls had become less frequent and more superficial. However, as the wedding date approached, I began to notice subtle changes in Emma's behavior that filled me with a growing sense of unease and confusion that I could quite put my finger on at first. She started taking longer to return my phone calls, and when she did call back, our conversations felt rushed and somewhat stilted, as if she was checking items off a to-do list rather than sharing the excitement of planning her special day with her mother. When I suggested meeting for lunch to discuss the final details, she would claim to be too busy with work, and when I offered to fly out to visit her and help with last-minute preparations, she would insist that everything was under control and that there was no need for me to make the trip. Most troubling of all, whenever I asked about specific logistics for the Paris trip, which hotel we would be staying at, what time our flights were, whether she needed help with any of the arrangements, she would give me vague, non-committal answers that left me feeling more confused than informed. I tried to tell myself that she was just stressed about the wedding because I remembered how overwhelming my own wedding planning had been, but deep down, something felt wrong in a way that I couldn't ignore, no matter how much I wanted to believe that everything would work out perfectly. All I wanted was to be there for my daughter on the most important day of her life, to see her walk down the aisle in the beautiful dress we had chosen together, to dance with her at the reception, and to officially welcome James into our family with the kind of celebration that Emma had been dreaming about since she was a little girl playing dress-up in my old wedding veil. More than anything, I wanted to feel like I was an integral part of this milestone moment, not just as someone who had helped plan and pay for significant portions of the wedding, but as Emma's mother, the person who had been there for every other important moment in her life, from her first steps to her graduation from college to the day she got her dream job. I had already taken time off from work, purchased a beautiful mother-of-a-bride dress that Emma had approved, and made arrangements for my elderly mother, Emma's grandmother, to have someone check on her while I was in Paris, because I knew that Emma's great-grandmother would never forgive me if I missed sharing stories about the wedding with her when I returned. In my heart, I had envisioned this trip as a chance for Emma and me to create new memories together, perhaps even visiting some of the same places her father and I had explored during our honeymoon, and I had been looking forward to those quiet moments between the ceremony and reception when we could sit together, and I could tell her how proud I was of the woman she had become. 3 weeks before the wedding date, my worst fears were confirmed in the most painful way imaginable when I received an email, not even a phone call, but an impersonal email that began with the words that would haunt me for months afterward. Mom, I need to let you know that there have been some changes to the wedding plans that I should have discussed with you earlier. As I continued reading, my hands trembling and my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, Emma explained that she and James had decided they wanted a more intimate ceremony with only immediate family members, and that unfortunately, this meant that the guest list had to be significantly reduced. She went on to say that James's parents would still be attending because they lived in Europe and had already made all their arrangements, but that she hoped I would understand that having too many people there would make the day feel overwhelming and less special. The email concluded with what felt like the final blow. If you want to be a part of the day, you can watch the ceremony through the live stream that James's cousin will be setting up. And I know you'll be able to feel like you re there with us, even though you're rewatching from home. She signed off with "Love, Emma," as if those two words could somehow soften the devastating impact of what she had just told me. As if reducing me to a virtual spectator at my own daughter's wedding was just a minor inconvenience, rather than the most hurtful thing anyone had ever done to me. I sat at my kitchen table for what felt like hours, reading and rereading that email until the words blurred together through my tears. And then something inside me shifted in a way that surprised even myself, because instead of the overwhelming sadness and heartbreak I had expected to feel, I was filled with a cold, clear anger that gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. For the first time since Emma had announced her engagement, I saw the situation with perfect clarity, and I realized that my daughter had not only excluded me from the most important day of her life, but she had done it in the most cowardly way possible, through an email sent weeks before the wedding, when she knew it would be too late for me to fight the decision or try to change her mind. As I sat there, I remembered all the sacrifices I had made over the years, all the times I had put Emma's needs before my own, all the money I had spent on her education, her apartment deposits, her car repairs, and yes, her wedding expenses, including the $15,000 I had already transferred to her account to help pay for the Paris venue, the flowers, the photographer, and most significantly, the 10-day honeymoon in Tuscany that was supposed to be my wedding gift to her and James. In that moment of crystal clear realization, I understood that Emma had been taking advantage of my unconditional love and generosity, treating me like an ATM rather than her mother, and expecting that I would simply accept her decision without any consequences because that's what I had always done in the past whenever she had hurt my feelings or made choices that excluded me from her life. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of calm determination that felt both foreign and empowering, and I knew exactly what I needed to do to show Emma that actions have consequences, and that treating people badly, even your own mother, comes with a price that can't be ignored or brushed aside with a casual apology. I started by calling the travel agency that had booked Emma and James's honeymoon package, and I calmly explained that I needed to cancel the reservations because there had been a change in circumstances that made the trip no longer possible. The agent tried to convince me that canceling so close to the travel date would result in significant penalties, but I assured her that I was fully aware of the financial implications and that I wanted to proceed with the cancellation anyway, requesting that any refund be sent directly to my account, since I was the one who had paid for the entire package. Next, I contacted the florist in Paris who was supposed to provide Emma's bridal bouquet and centerpieces, arrangements that I had specifically requested and paid for as my contribution to making her day special. And I canceled that order as well, explaining that the client would need to make alternative arrangements. I then called the photographer whose services I had also purchased as a wedding gift and informed him that his contract was being terminated, though I was professional enough to give him the standard notice period and didn't ask for a refund, since he had already done some preliminary work. By the end of that day, I had systematically canceled every single thing that I had paid for or arranged for Emma's wedding, from the champagne toast I had planned to host for the wedding party to the dinner reservations I had made for the night before the ceremony. And with each phone call, I felt a growing sense of satisfaction that came from finally taking control of a situation where I had been treated with complete disrespect. 2 days later, Emma called me in a state of panic that was both heartbreaking and vindicating to witness, crying hysterically as she told me that everything was falling apart and she didn't understand how so many vendors could suddenly cancel their services at the last minute. And as I listened to her desperation, I felt a mixture of sadness for what our relationship had become, and pride in myself for finally standing up for my own dignity and self-worth. When she finally paused long enough for me to speak, I told her very calmly that I had been the one to cancel everything, and that I had done it because I realized that if I wasn't important enough to be invited to her wedding in person, then perhaps my financial contributions weren't important enough either, and that she would need to figure out how to have her fairy tale wedding using only the resources provided by the people who had actually been deemed worthy of attending. The silence that followed was deafening, and when Emma finally found her voice, she accused me of being vindictive and cruel, of ruining her special day out of spite. But I simply reminded her that she had been the one to make the choice to exclude me, and that every decision has consequences that extend far beyond what we initially imagined. I told her that I had spent 28 years teaching her about responsibility and respect through my actions, and that this was simply the final lesson in a curriculum that she apparently hadn't been paying attention to until now. In the end, Emma did manage to have her wedding in Paris, though it was a much smaller and less elaborate affair than she had originally planned, and while she did eventually apologize for how she had handled the situation, our relationship was forever changed by those few weeks when we both learned that love without respect is meaningless, and that sometimes the people we hurt the most are the ones who finally teach us the most important lessons about how to treat others with the dignity they deserve.